This video is sponsored by Crimson Manifesto and Knuckles OX. Our story resumes with Bardock and the group on King Kai's planet in the other world. Thanks to the supporting actors and standby fighters on Earth having already gathered and protected them a capsule corp with Bulma's family, our Saiyan heroes informed the literal exact moment in which the Dragon Balls have been reactivated and are ready to grant another 2 wishes. Something our scarred Saiyan hero is immensely appreciative of, which Bulma in particular takes a great deal of credit for, simply on account of enjoying the praise of her teacher, and having missed him a lot, like Mr. Gohan, Miss Gine, Miss Muezli, the boys, and everyone else, making her especially eager to go ahead and get to wishing, since the plan for how they do so was already set out when they decided to fight, bring back their fallen, and undo all the damage done to Earth with the first, while destroying only the Tree of Might and that fruit with the second. A perfect equivalent exchange, and the first step in their victory. However, here, Bardock asks her to hold up, and for a slight alteration to the wish to revive him before it's made. The Saiyan admits that he put a lot of thought into it. In fact, flashing back, we'd see him agonize a bit over the choice, pacing back and forth with his eyes clenched, and a somewhat reluctantly visualized representation of the gazes of Shinran and Tarumbo, as to anticipate the consequences of his plans best. Instead, the looming imagined dragons only serve to hammer home how massive the impact of this use of the wish orbs will be regardless of what they do. That's simply the nature of the position Turles and the Heaters have put them in. Debating with King Kai and Anin about the moral implications of the second wish alone hammered that home quite bluntly. Coming back to life and saving Earth is a no-brainer, but he can't help but feel that's too small scale, so much so as to be considered a waste. So many of their wishes so far have been, after all, as in truth, all he's ever thought about using the Dragon Balls for was delusions of vengeance and retribution. So it's annoyingly ironic that he now struggles with whether targeting Frieza's empire, even indirectly, aligns with his selfish ambitions or betrays his honor as a warrior. Anin reassures him that the equivalent exchange ensures balance at the very least, while King Kai is still rather insistent Frieza shouldn't be messed with yet, as Bardock has done just fine biding his time and taking it easy. But at the same time, it doesn't exactly play out that way, as threats and would-be rivals of Frieza also continue to be a problem for more planets than just Earth. A change in the universe has been a long time coming, and usually, it's the job of deities even higher ranked than he to usher in and stimulate those changes. But most of the bigwigs are a bit lazy if you ask the North Kaio. So if Bardock doesn't do it, then who will? And so back in the present, this encouragement and the silent support of King Kai, Bubbles, Gregory, Anin, and her faintly gleaming halo matching his own all stand together as Bardock communicates his new wishes to Bulma. We'll get into the exact wording later for dramatic impact, since there is always a cost for Tarumbo's wishes, and Shinran, as the seemingly more responsible of the pair, quickly reminds them that the scales must be balanced, so they should beware what is tipped in return. But all we need to know for now is that Bardock and Anin are both revived, their halos disappearing, and the Earth appears to begin slowly rejuvenating despite the Tree of Might, with little time to waste, as the Crusher Core is already barreling towards the Earth at high speed. After re-entering a solar system, our formerly dead heroes begin the trip back down Snake Way, with King Kai giving them a final gift for repairing and slightly upgrading their clothes for them before they go, jokingly citing that the scarred Saiyan in particular will really appreciate this update, getting a serious but thankful nod from the 2 defenders of Earth in return, as they say their farewells and leap from the tiny planet back onto the winding road. Bardock can still move much faster than her, however, so this time, Anin encourages him that she'll catch up and serve as the group's cavalry, seeing Bardock race ahead at top speed, both eager to reunite with his family and the rest of his friends, as well as facing off with again and truly settling things with Turles. Meanwhile, the rest of the Z-Fighters have already long assembled and are even having a small last supper, as it were, beneath the Tree of Might while waiting on the enemy. Despite it being a tense and uncertain moment for them, our fighters all enjoy themselves and share short banter over their admittedly heartwarming food, at least for those of them to eat. The baleful Shinseiju cast long shadows of the large group of diverse warriors as they gather around a fire and bowls of warm and hearty stew, the tastiness and good company of which contrasts starkly with the scenery, stakes both real and emotional, and the impending battle making for a rather unique vibe, the one all the defenders of Earth take solace in. After returning from sneaking away to share some of their food with Nappa, Raditz joins in on Granolah and Yamcha's back and forth teasing and bickering on the Desert Bandage side, since these days it's more important than ever that cowards stick together, which is good advice for all of them right now. Laughing along with the group with its joke, and Yamcha's insistence not to be lumped in with the Raditz either. Gine shares the story of the first time she cooked for Team Bardock and nearly turned it into Team Gine, with how quickly the other Saiyans turned on our mate, just as soon as someone offered them more than charred meat for rations, citing her own personal theory that fear, courage, and morale are all found in the stomach. That's why it's important a warrior is well fueled, and because of that, they should all get a 3rd or 4th serving, and she made plenty. In turn, as hearing Gine fall back into chef mode has begun to make even her feel nostalgic, Muezli shares a story about the Ceruleans and their various celebrations and festivals, as well as about Flake, Granola's shy/sheltered childhood. which she is glad to see is a thing of the past. That freedom and carefree innocence he's gained on Earth being something else she wants to fight to protect. Like, for example, the currently unfolding comedic scene of the boys beginning a scuffle, all over having their 5th, 6th, and 7th serving out of the massive pot of stew respectively. But this is the last light-hearted thing they get to do before trouble arrives in the form of the Crusher Corps' return. Turles' massive attack pod-style ship descends and lands on a high sturdy branch of the Tree of Might with a deafening roar and shockwave, flattening the surrounding dilapidated forest, which had only just begun to look a lot more lively, thanks to the effects of whatever Bardock's wish was, and the Z-Fighters' cozy campsite, which is also destroyed in the process. Dust and debris scatter as the Crusher Corps file out, their cruel smirks and the ruthless glints in their eyes illuminated by the eerie glow of the ship's lights, which give it its own intimidating and oppressive aura, as each of its occupants takes in the Earth once again, all in turn quite surprised that the planet doesn't appear as haggard or desolated as they expected, which bodes well for the quality of the treasure they've come to claim, and even eggs on the crew into excited rowdiness and merriment. However, when Turles steps out last behind Vegeta in a calm and reserved manner, his uncanny resemblance to Bardock is still a shock among many of the Z-Fighters. Even those more familiar with how Saiyans work like Raditz are surprised about how easy it'd be to mistake his uncle for his father, while Granolah nervously sweats that he guesses Bright Slew is real. The sight of this shock and hesitance, though, seems to give the bored-looking Saiyan conqueror some entertainment, as he's decided to take it as a compliment, that despite not having as many scars on his mug, it must be clear to these warriors that he's not nearly as soft as his big brother. Despite that, Muezli and Gine flippantly rally their group to disregard any sentimentality towards fighting an opponent with Bardock's face. As to all the fighters assembled here to defend the Earth, this isn't special. By now, they all know good and well every one of Bardock's strongest and closest allies has wanted to kill him at one point or another. Hell, currently in some cases. Now isn't the time to hesitate. It's time to go wild and put all that anger and passion behind their fists, along with the pain and a serving of the defeat and heartbreak these guys put them through. Upon witnessing the resolve of his brother's family, despite his death, Turles can't help but get even more invested as his cruel smirk stretches into a wide grin, showing genuine excitement winning out over his melancholy, and that annoying and unwanted longing in the back of his head to see his brother once again, thus causing Turles to declare he's already taking a liking to the extended members of his low-class scum clan. This serves to help finally draw his head out of his ass, and gets him to embrace the thrill of the battle ahead finally, much to the core of Vegeta's smug delight. As a result, the self-proclaimed destroyer decides that in honor of this newfound affection, he'll fight similarly to how Bardock and the Z-Fighters did last time, since no matter how they prepared for battle, it's his home field advantage now, and this time, he has something extremely precious and valuable to protect, and he's already waited a year, so there's no need to rush. As their commander, he'll even make things more interesting by openly revealing that Team Turles' battle plan is hereby now defending or running interference for a single critical point in the battle, the Shinseichu, or more accurately, its fruit. So as long as he stands behind his men, no one else will claim or threaten his treasure, and he can enjoy watching all the fighting, a plan which gets laughter from the Corps, as they agree this sounds like the most fun for the sake of their trip back to this dump. In contrast though, Nappa and Gas, as per their bonds with the heroes they've made, and because they've been on the clock the last year, opt to sit the battle out entirely. In the case of Nappa, he literally walks over to the Z-Fighters' destroyed camp, and even plops down to enjoy the rest of Gine's overturned stew, directly out of the pot she borrowed from Corn, with neither side of the conflict caring, as they've both done their jobs in their eyes respectively, while the original, or in this case Canon Crusher Corps members, appear as if they are prepared to begin the conflict. However, deeming this beneath them, as per the readings they're getting from their scouters from the majority of their fighters, the likes of the twins propose the very solution they taught Nappa, which the Z-Fighters are already extremely familiar with, as by combining Cybermen seeds and a whole regular fruit of the Tree of Might, they produce a far larger and more varied and evolved yield than the crop Nappa farmed to face them a year ago. No doubt due to their nightmarish experimentation and augmentation for the sake of planetary destruction. Also, you should know by now, I love making an army of fodder for the grander ensemble cast to take on and contribute to defeating, so that way they can't be called useless. It's like one of my favorite tropes. And because of that, we see a multicolored mass-produced army of bloodthirsty creatures bearing down on our heroes at shocking speeds for a mass tag team of terror. But, regardless of the changes and greater effect of this strategy, the heroes, guided by the wisdom of the more experienced fighters among them, have already resolved to face something like this by employing coordinated tactics and new, much earlier mastered and evolved fighting techniques than what they were possessing canon by this point, in order to counter immediately and effectively, showing marked improvement from their training and preparation through their sheer confidence in the face of such odds. This is primarily demonstrated when a grand majority of the Z-Fighters don't even give Team Turles' mass-produced soldiers the recognition of being worth their time, whilst the likes of King Piccolo and Dr. Wheelo, piloting a newly repaired and enhanced suit, stand at the forefront of the group as easily some of its strongest warriors, ones who subsequently see the opposing opposing stampede of feral creatures and raise the bet by conjuring and manufacturing their own underlings, as the king grows to the same size as the Doctor to accommodate materializing a massive egg packed full of demon spawn, using his even more precise key control, and even some of the concepts of loving child rearing, which being around Gine, Goku, and Didelia quite reluctantly instilled in him. Holding strong to his demonic ways, the king still believes it, love that is, to be over sentimental drivel, but he can't deny the cold logic and the greater results it seems to bring than fear and hate, even from a warrior race of people like the Saiyans, which could easily be seen equally as, if not more demonic than his Kami Monaito's own. It appears, despite some seeming setbacks, that philosophy continues to prove its merit with repeated successes over and over. And thus, with this demonically empowered brood, he also imbues a genuine desire for them to survive this battle and prosper on this beautiful world, unknowingly, just like Bardock, hardening his ideals of atonement into ambitions of peace. While for Dr. Wheelo, though this requires implementing the admittedly unpleasant and until now unrealistic bioman launcher function he and Dr. Breeze found in his suit's original schematics from Dr. Kochi, he views it as keenly worthwhile to even the odds this way, and further the noble pursuits of knowledge and life, having, like the enemy scientist, taken a keen interest in the Cyberman species once he'd heard of it from the other fighters. The coincidence with Cochin's mechanical menaces is extraordinarily interesting, and almost makes him long to speak with his old quack partner one last time. He would have rather recreated his unfortunately renamed Bio-Warriors, but right now, he wanted quantity, not quality. And thus, suddenly the wasteland becomes a true battlefield as the Demon Biomen Alliance take on and begin faring well against the opposing side of mobs, as Raditz calls them, on account of their unique strengths, from the demon spawn to their magical-like key control, and the mechanical tenacity of the artificial life forms made by Dr. Wheelo. And finally, with the fact that the numbers on both sides are even at about 500 units each, a chaotic 1,000-man rumble is created in an instant, which draws all eyes and attention, as it's just as entertaining as the Crusher Corps hoped. Their first mistake, however, is assuming that their tactics are better because they are crueler, since the Z fighters are betting on their plan being crazier, and thus much more unpredictable. Next evidence bets by some of the Z fighters suddenly leaping into the fray to begin vastly turning the tides, since initially they're tipping the power scale so severely that the Crusher Corps' forces appear to be quickly on the back foot. And speaking out of story for a moment, we'll just say this is what a majority of the fighters on our side focus on, while the heavy hitters focus on taking out the enemy commanders, and then Turles. And that way I don't have to constantly mention what characters who probably can't make that big of a difference are doing right now, at least not until a closer point for them to actually do so. However, as long drawn out battles against large numbers eventually would, this battle will begin to steadily whittle and grind down the good guys' side, since the Crusher Corps' fighters don't have as much care for friend or foe, and thus happily try to self-destruct and take wide scores of the opponent out with them, with a giant clash of numbers suddenly raging, and the Z fighters revealing more and more of their true strength. Amand, Dies, Cacao, Lacase, and Raisin all lock onto targets, whom they deem to be the biggest issues. The cost of this being that some fighters who have yet to move are still left free to pursue Turles and Vegeta, who, while growing bored, begin to ascend further up the tree and near the clouds in order to get comfortable with a bird's eye view, followed by the likes of Gine, Muezli, Devilman, King Piccolo, Raditz, Granolah, and Goku, with their group calling out their trust in the likes of Dr. Wheelo, Ox King, and the rest they leave behind to finish things up. We won't go too painfully in depth with these battles and matchups, as to mention every beat of choreography, but I can give basics and the outcomes, since if we were to indulge, I'd be here pretty much endlessly, wanking our side characters, who in many cases just deserve entire what-ifs based around themselves, so this story has explored some concepts of. The fights that came to mind with this setup are Dr. Wheelo versus the dangerous cyborg fighter Cacao, Masters Roshi and Shin versus twin blitzers Lacase and Raisin, Ox King versus gigantic warrior Amand, and finally, as kind of a junk drawer fight, Krillin, Yamcha, Chaozu, Yajirobe, Mark, aka Hercule, and Launch would all lead the remainder of the Biomen and Demons against the daring Charger Dies, and the remainder of the varied Cybermen army. I think this works because it still allows a group of mostly canon Z fighters to show off in a fight against opponents who in canon would be way out of their league, since their techniques literally are also 10 times stronger. Ultimately, this fight ends the simplest, with Dies being overwhelmed, since this remaining group of Z fighters can corral the Cybermen well, their plan cunningly becoming to trap the space-traveling warrior prince among his forces, and then detonate them all with a combination of attacks. Dies, however, weasels his way out of this, sacrificing the Cybermen army, and deciding to bide his time and see how the other battles go, as he focuses on cheap shots or evasion for buying time, since individually, this group is still weaker than him. With the ruler of Mount Frypan, despite his immense beastly strength of the Ox, at first, he proves to be less than a match for Amand, mostly because his head seems so out of the game. The usually gentle giant has let his rage cloud his mind too much, as all he can think about is finishing this battle up quick, so he can go back to a peaceful life with his wife and daughter, as well as the fact that his real target right now is Gas, in order to avenge Anin. Noticing and empathizing with this plight, Grandpa Gohan attempts to offer solid support, and join forces with his fellow Turtle School member, but even this isn't enough to turn the tide completely. That doesn't occur until Chi-Chi, disobeying her father's orders and full of the same fiery fighting spirit as her mother, sneaks her way onto the battlefield to lend her own support, along with a great deal of other characters not deemed fit for the fight. In her case, catching a thrown and dodged mighty axe attack, meant to behead Amon, but since she is easily ignored, she is able to redirect it and land a finishing blow right to the head, with this finally seeming to fell the great red brute, despite his ferocious physique. Roshi and Shin test their newly repaired teamwork and unity against Lakusei and Raisin, with it at first proving too tough a challenge, as they disagree on the ways to go about things, including suggesting equally self-destructive solutions to the problem, in the likes of the Mafuba and the Kikoho, and then bickering with one another about whether or not they can even pull these techniques off. In contrast, the twins are perfectly united in their mind power destroying tag team, and thus are even more annoying, so much so that seeing them brutally defeated becomes a unifying force, as the two masters show humility and call on Mr. Satan and Tao Pai Pai to help them out as well. The master duo then combined their power to separate the twins, who need each other to complete their Gemini shot attack. At the same time, the hero supports land critical blows from the Dynamite Cannon ×10 and Super Dodon Ray ×10, which seemingly KO both cleanly, as they're blown out of the sky and sent hurtling to the ground. And finally, with Cacao versus Willow, it would come down to a battle of whose mechanics and specs are more advanced, with this initially remaining Cacao's position, as his speed alone neutralizes a lot of the Doctor's moves and options, making Willow marvel at the feat of cybernetic augmentation, as this speedy retribution from a fellow mechanical menace is already damaging his newly rebuilt body. However, Willow's bonds carry him through as well, since this event was this time planned for. Now, he has been equipped with capsulized spare parts to keep himself in the fight longer, as a form of regeneration. What's more, despite his position as a former villain, he receives his own support, as for some inexplicable reason, the Pilaf gang, Boma, and surprisingly even Jocko have also stormed their way onto the battlefield to offer any support they can, and a live update that Bardock and Anin are on their way. The joy this creates, however, distracts Willow from reattaching his new arm properly, and gives Cacao an opening for a super fast cosmic attack. However, to the speedy cyborg's great horror, Willow would already quickly adapt, and offer a nearby Boma a chance for an interesting experiment, as with her superhuman strength and a slight understanding of ki in this timeline, she's able to hoist and aim the severed arm aloft like a rocket launcher, and set it off with a self-made spark, which allows her to assist with landing a perfect photon strike, dead on with aim even Granolah would be proud of her for. As Cacao is visibly blown to bits, he's also likely the only core member who probably couldn't make full use of the Shinseiju fruit, thanks to the nature of his body. Though speaking of, this isn't the case for his compatriots, who now have ample motivation to get serious and live up to their titles as crushing destroyers. Meanwhile, just as Turles begins to think he's seen enough, ironically, his higher position to oversee the battle means he's out of earshot for Boma's update, and thus he decides to focus his attention on the fighters who've come to face him this time in Bardock's stead, though looking to Vegeta as he steps in front of him and childishly declares that he has unfinished business with the runts of the group and that Saiyan woman, so he'll need to steal at least 4 of his master's prey. But instead, Turles flippantly tells the kids to run along and play, not interested in their immature games, since now that he thinks about it some more, he really likes the idea of proving whether or not his brother's mate is the legendary Super Saiyan like Vegeta was rambling about. Though the prince doesn't like this order, he obeys, looking to his foes and pointing them off in the direction of some secondary location not too far away, so that way they aren't easily interrupted or endangering the weak and injured. That's the way these losers like to operate after all. Wanting nothing more than to rumble and settle their scores, Granolah and Raditz take off without hesitation, while Goku lingers and looks torn, an obvious fire to challenge Turles in his eyes. But encouraging him, Gine and Muezli assure him to leave this to them, while Piccolo reminds him not to forget his training, since he, unlike his mothers, expects Son Goku back here in record time for the real challenge. This clears the way for the boys to have their rematch with Vegeta. However, this time, they insist on taking him on in a mini gauntlet of his own, one by one, giving him little choice in the matter, as Goku and Granolah merely post up to observe, while Raditz immediately reveals his new full power and rushes into the fray with Vegeta. This unexpected dauntlessness, combined with new shocking speeds, and the power-up of Raditz's rapid growth, surprised the Saiyan Prince, seeing him left vulnerable to no small number of sucker punches before he finally gets his guard up, having fully not expected this aggression and berserker style from the low-class cowardly weakling. But just as Vegeta seems to react accordingly, Raditz puts that big brain and motor mouth to use, in order to also challenge the Prince in the arena of bragging and boasting, throwing him off further, and using the opportunity and slight difference in their sizes to give Vegeta the humbling he's always deserved, little broing him a lot more brutally and rougher than he ever put Kakarot through, in a blatant adaptation of Nappa's unquestionably cruel, brutish style, suddenly puffing his chest out and acting as if he's the most elite Saiyan to ever do the damn thing, or teasingly asking the Prince to announce to him what his power level is, since he gave up putting a number to us a while ago, and suggests he do the same, and then just as suddenly, snaps the heel of his foot out in a dynamite roundhouse, so that he shatters Vegeta's scouter directly on his face for a truly humiliating blow. The sight of this causing boisterous laughter from none other than Nappa, who reveals himself to have followed the younger fighters, specifically to see this outcome. The simple act of doing so, combined with the changes in Raditz, being all the elite proven prodigy needs to know his former caretaker has betrayed him, and demeaned himself by genuinely training a lower class Saiyan. But this is no matter, as Vegeta still has far more talent and potential than Raditz could ever hope for, leaning on it to desperately tap into his own latent power of Ki Sense, like Master Turles did before him. Since unlike in canon, he's now witnessed the use of the technique, along with Ki suppression twice. And with this brand new budding mastery, he regains confidence, seeing there is still a significant gap in his and Raditz's power. Using this, in simple adaptation to his style, to hand Raditz a clean loss, when he is blown off his feet from a slightly landed inverted dropkick to the chin, sending him flying off his feet and onto his back stunned. As a clincher, Vegeta prepares a Ki blast to finish Raditz, but as the bright yellow blast forms, a smaller and denser green one zips through it and causes it to explode in his face, embarrassingly covering it in soot, as Granolah steps forward and tells Raditz his time is up, as the wild-haired Saiyan to Vegeta's shock and dismay climbs back to shaky feet, just as he saw Kakarot do a year ago, an obvious desire to argue with the Cerulean over this, and possibly even continue the fight with him instead, using even more overwhelming intensity. However, respecting Granolah, Raditz spits blood and laments the bounty of other options he had to keep the fight going, squaring off with someone more stoic, and with Raditz and Nappa shut up at the moment, the tiny prince happily takes the opportunity to speak and hear himself talk, asking if Granolah is ready for him to break both his arms entirely this time, bone by bone, before he makes sure he kills him. A similar glint though appears in Granolah's eye, as he rather easily turns them red, and tells his opponent to quit yapping and start shooting. With that, the two sides, as their natural affinity, begin a Ki blast spam war of epic proportions. However, upon closer inspection, something is certainly off, as Granolah cleanly holds the advantage in this competition thanks to his sharpshooter style, which has benefited from so many different mentors, their coaching, and especially their ways of applying and weaponizing their Ki. Because of all that, Granolah has come to understand something Vegeta desperately needs to learn, since as the Cerulean sees it, the Saiyan won't beat him as he is. Not while he can't put his heart and fighting spirit into every single Ki blast like him. Ego and pride aren't enough. That's why his attacks are so vapid and lightweight, making them easy to shoot through or deflect. With this being proven, as newly developed Ki senses come back to instantly bite Vegeta in the ass, due to how overwhelming it becomes, especially when Granolah causes the Ki bolts to ricochet and trick shot off one another. The confusion keeping Vegeta distracted long enough for Granolah to erase his presence completely, before attempting to rush in close and lay Vegeta out, with a brilliant strike that hits his weakest vital point at full blast, stunning Vegeta badly as he doubles over and coughs violently, however, showing deranged levels of constitution, along with his ego and pride. The Saiyan invader simply uses this close proximity to place a hand on Granolah and release a rush Ki wave through his body that sends him stumbling back, thankfully still alive thanks to how off-kilter Vegeta is, though really feeling the force of a Ki blast so nearly being used to gut him, if not for the prince seemingly losing his power before he could make another kill shot, as the final fighter of the gauntlet announces that Granolah too is now out as they agreed upon, so he's up, with Vegeta looking back to find Kakarot holding on to and squeezing his tail tight enough to actually sap just a bit of his strength, while that strange wild white aura leaks off of it. Without wasting time, Goku immediately turns this hold into a full dragon throw, with Vegeta scrambling to keep his footing as he is flung away. Then, just as he tries to stop himself, the power pole is extended and swung violently as it catches the prince in the ribs, and begins crashing his body through mountains as they're cut down. When he finally stops this and counters with a rush attack, Vegeta is shocked again by how strangely this Saiyan fights, as Goku flies at him as well, and fires Ki blasts in midair to redirect and build his momentum, nearly shocking the prince with his velocity as well, if not for Vegeta using one hand for deflecting Kakarot's cupped hands as he performs a Kamehameha, and the other for a punch in the teeth when it becomes clear he is about to go for a bite or a mouth beam attack. However, thanks to his Demon Clan training and running with Lord Slug, Vegeta has no answer for Goku manifesting beams of Ki from his eyes to strike Vegeta dead in the forehead, giving yet another painful and humiliatingly strong attack, and infuriating Vegeta as his legs have grown weak enough that he's forced to take a knee to recover. On the other hand, due to viewing this fight as merely a formality, Goku is still ready for more. In fact, he's been warmed up, now wanting only to follow his own instincts and ambition to fight his uncle Turles, and thus, he tells Vegeta he should quit now, since they are gonna win this, and fighting him again has already gotten boring. The orange-clad Saiyan then begins zipping back to join his mom, Piccolo, and the others, which only angers Vegeta more, as he hurls a cheap shot blast at Goku for ignoring him. However, with complete confidence he doesn't need to worry, Goku pays this no mind, with total faith it will be intercepted for him. As back in the fray, Granolah and Raditz use this attempt on their little brother's life as an excuse to call a truce and team up. While facing off with the two of them again, and ashamed he's been pushed to such lengths, Vegeta produces his own Shinseiju fruit, and tells them to come at him as he takes a big bite out of it. Meanwhile, Muezli, Gine, Devilman, and King Piccolo take on Turles together, but this battle very quickly devolved into pure chaos. At first, Gine's super potent Saiyan power, Muezli's foresight and tactics, the lethality of Great Devilman, and the cunning of Demon King Piccolo present a challenge greater than even what Bardock initially presented to the destroyer of the universe. At least while he was alive, that is, since Turles' Ki sense almost makes him alarmed by the feeling of Spike's ki, while he can clearly see that the Namekian doesn't think too dissimilar to himself, making him and his cruel and crafty tactics a tricky opponent, especially when he has the aid of someone seeing into the future seemingly. However, Turles is a member of Bardock's family himself, meaning his ruthlessness and cunning are only bolstered by his extreme passion and tenacity, as showing creativity of his own. He disappears from the battlefield by flying down, whilst Devilman gives chase, using this as a ruse to lure him into a false sense of security, as the Great Devilmite beam is fired and begins honing in on the same. But thanks to snagging up an arguably more evil meat shield than himself, Turles isn't the recipient of it, since knowing them well enough to assume they're playing dead, he uses Lacasse like he once tried to use him as a test subject, creating a living space pirate bomb, which Turles chucks right back at Devilman, causing the heroic fighter to be consumed in a horrific explosion, and the formation and cornerstone of Gine's anti-Turles squad to be broken, at least it appears so, before Goku returns at that exact moment to link up with Piccolo and the others, who begin fighting even harder now that their ace is gone, growing more and more desperate by the minute, and thus sloppier. But it still can't be denied that Turles is having fun, especially now that Bardock's mini-me is here, with the uncle taking a horrifying interest in his nephew. Piccolo tries to defend him, but only ends up underfoot, and the victim of a meteor burst for his trouble, as Muezli and Gine are caught up and hurt by the blast too. Blowing the other adult aliens back, Turles seizes Goku's head, even as he tries to fight back, cruelly spinning his body around, until he can hold and force him to look at whatever it is he likes, as he takes him even higher into the sky. Sadly, the planet seems to have had its moon destroyed, but that's really no trouble when one can create power balls, and has more than enough energy to spare, which could also be said for Vegeta after all. So that soon, Turles returns to the ground with his nephew, as an out-of-control Uzaru, which is easily sicked onto its own allies. Doing their best to recover from the brutal battle with Turles, King Piccolo, Muezli, and Gine hang in there just a bit longer, using their regeneration, wrathful Saiyan constitution, and foresight powers to avoid at least some of the damage incurred. But Turles is still extremely dangerous, even without Goku making his job easier. From here, though, as the battlefields degrade and become even more hectic and unpredictable, they recombine, evolving into a fiercer confrontation, and things begin to look at their very worst in this amalgamation of the Saiyan Saga and the Tree of Might, as our heroes in this timeline have never faced steeper odds. Gine is forced to do her best to calm Goku down, with the help of Piccolo, and surprisingly, the MVP of Didalia, who lends her support, and finally tames Goku by reminding him of their song, while Muezli tries to rally and gather all their allies who can still move to save those who can't, or to preserve the bodies of their fallen, while with the power ball in the sky, it is more than likely at least Vegeta is tempted to become a great ape as well, though Raditz still isn't completely sure he'd be able to control himself, and this hesitance creates more doubt. Worse, he doesn't have the power to spare, and Granolah simply hopes his training under gas really will be enough to deal with all this, the thought causing him to wonder just where the heater is right now, as he's given a stark reminder of why he feared Uzaru so much, while staring into the giant Gallic gun Vegeta is forming. There's saving grace at the last possible moment, coming in the form of Nappa of all things, when he decides to stand in front of this attack and shield them. The last sight Raditz sees of his mentor being a soft smirk over his boulder-like shoulders, though even amongst Vegeta's booming laughter that this is good riddance to bad rubbish, the long-haired Saiyan feels as if he can still hear Nappa's ghost telling him to surpass the elites, and not to stop attacking no matter what until he or his opponent is dead. At the same time, seeing the display of softness by Goku, Turles attacks him and Didalia, setting him right back to rampaging, but this time with his anger all squarely aimed at his uncle. However, being more than strong enough to bear the brunt of this only makes Goku a target as well for a kill driver, as Turles suddenly gives up any ambitions of having his nephew join him, intending to leave him with the praise that the apple didn't fall far from the tree. While unlike in canon as Goku would for Gohan, Gine actually hesitates to amputate her son's tail, so that he shrinks and avoids the attack, as she has a cultural tie to it. But as he lacks it entirely, King Piccolo makes the save, severing the tail with light apologies before using his own body to shield both Goku and the baby dragons, as they are hit dead on and shot out of the sky hard, the sight of which upsets Gine's spirit to no end, as she once again has a bit of trouble maintaining her power and the mindset of a warrior, when the mother and her only wants to check on her children and make sure they're safe, leaving her with only one option, to turn her blind wrath loose on Bardock's brother, with this of course creating an opening for the cool-headed Turles to begin wailing heavily on Gine when she gets sloppy or overcommits, only to be stopped by Gas of all people from knocking her out of the fight completely, as he for some reason interrupts their bout to demand that Turles relinquish his head and the fruit to him, as he suddenly joins the battle of his own volition, obviously acting independent of any orders from Alec, as this is far too brash and hot-headed for him. At the same time, finding themselves not far from Raditz and Granolah's battle with the Uzaru Vegeta, Goku, and a thankfully still alive dragon frantically check on King Piccolo, who at this point is fresh out of energy to heal his horrible wounds, with Goku desperately trying to have his mentor hang on until they can get a senzu or get him to Monaito. However, with a cruel but somehow softened smile, the king chastises that he knows good and well there simply isn't enough time, with Goku looking up to realize Vegeta's giant foot now hovers above them, While just as desperate to protect someone precious to them as the Demon King is, Granolah and Raditz try to hold it up with all their might and tell Goku to listen and get out of there. Thankfully, Daima heeds the advice, but Goku is harder to convince as he comes closer and closer to being squashed, until, making a decision, Piccolo Daima softly wipes away Goku's tears and asks him to protect his child instead, before he expels a large egg from his throat with enough force that it carries Goku out of harm's way as well, and sends him shooting away while clutching onto it to protect it as they bounce off the ground. And reluctantly seeing Goku is safe, Granolah and Raditz respect Piccolo's wish, allowing Vegeta's foot to crash into the earth and end the king. On the lookout, despite the formation of an egg before his death, Kami feels his life force beginning to fade thanks to the link between he and Piccolo. However, due to the noble nature of that death, and the circumstances he is leaving things in, the Guardian too is at peace when he passes, leaving Minato and Popo with only the message that he is certain now. Victory is theirs this day, because even when things are at their darkest and most hopeless, with no wishes to solve your problems, this is still Dragon Ball. In that moment, we break to Muezli's perspective, as thanks to her view of the battlefield, she has been treated to all the horrible sights of this war for Earth, just as vividly as she has sensed it all. Now she again watches helplessly, as Gine struggles to stay in a battle with Turles, and Gas blatantly breaking their contract. At the same time, pursued by a sadistic Vegeta, Goku desperately tries to protect Piccolo Jr.'s egg, as his brothers cover him, only for them to eventually be smacked out of the air by Vegeta's Uzaru fist, as he gloats over them about how easily they'll all be squashed. She sees their earthling allies doing their best to rally a final time and help for the little good it will do against the Shinseichu empowered Crusher Core. And then finally, she sees a bright flash of light and power, which brings with it hope. Suddenly, in a streak, something severs Vegeta's tail and knocks him off his feet brutally, while with similar speed and power, this streak of light zooms past each member of Bardock's family currently in danger, until finally halting at the base of the Tree of Might, with the defeated and barely standing Z-Fighters and remaining members of Team Turles all gawking at the sight of Bardock, alive and well again, brimming with power and bearing a deadly glare, as he holds and carries each of the people most precious to him in his arms and on his back. Though his demeanor quickly softens as he checks up on everyone and tells them how great of a job they've done so far, pretty much using the excuse to squeeze them all close for a hug he never thought he'd get to experience again. However, they can leave this to him now. Protesting this, however, are the remaining members of the Crusher Corps surrounding him, as Dice, Amand, and Raisin, as the final original members of Team Turles, seek to show their loyalty one final time, as Bardock has been deemed unworthy of their leader. But unfortunately, unlike their canon counterparts, who would try this with Goku using a 5-on-1 advantage, they are down to many men, and Bardock is nowhere near as merciful as his son, dropping all 3 space-traveling warriors to the ground dead with his own ruthless tactics, such as causing friendly fire in the confusion, or using a weaker opponent's body as a weapon or flail against another. In this showing of power, all are blown away at how effortlessly Bardock handles such monsters. While climbing his way from a mountain once again, this time stripped of his pride and Saiyanhood completely, Vegeta can't even muster the energy to get back into the fight at the moment, though he is entranced by what's happening, and the growing inclination that he has grown to loathe his master's bloodline entirely, having had Gine so rudely snatched from their fight. Turles and Gas are of course entranced by this showing from Bardock as well, with the pair each instantly flying down after him. However, for Gas, his path is blocked, as a familiar woman clad in godly-looking robes and bearing a burning red ore appears in his way, stating that she made it just in time to get her own revenge. As Turles lands to see how much the vibe and morale of the battlefield has changed with Bardock's return to life and tabling of the turns, saving his allies in danger and giving them senzu beans to get them back up and off the battlefield if he can. While for those who've been lost, he spares a moment and hardens his resolve all the more, finally locking eyes with his little brother once again after one long year and a lot of crazy training and growth to get to this point. Coldly, Bardock tells Turles to take what's left of his men and go, since he's already watched him die on a desolate world once before, so he'd rather not do it again. Though make no mistake, if he has to, he will put him in the ground personally. A crooked grin forming on his face, the Crusher Corps captain jeers that this is big talk from a man who he so recently did exactly that to, though this just earns him a sharp jab to the jaw that causes the merc to spit out a couple of teeth, as Bardock growls that he's changed a lot in this last year, so if his brother chooses to continue underestimating him, it won't end like last time. Pure low-class Saiyan blood pumping at the possibility that this might be more than empty words considering how effortlessly he dispatched his men. Turles roars at Bark to show him this powerful comeback of his then, though making the prudent decision not to show his hand all at once. The scarred survivor decides to simply give him a taste, using just his improved speed and physical power to engage in a flurry of fisticuffs that Turles must actually exert himself to contend with. And truthfully, contend is a generous term, as the formerly cape-clad Saiyan quickly finds himself with his back to the wall, since Bardock's fighting style now blends the ferocity of the Saiyans with an almost divine serenity to create a fighter with insurmountable focus and dedication towards defeating the enemy before him, which in this case is Turles himself. However, this does not mean that the wannabe Pirate King has no further tricks up his his own. Quite the opposite, in fact, as while he had not intended to use this, it seems he will have to in order to reclaim his rightful control of the battle and send his brother right back to hell. Though in all honesty, a large part of him just wants to. As it turns out, this is the power ball he had previously created to turn Goku berserk. As looking up into it, he feels the Blux waves course through his body and down into his tail, amplifying his already supreme Saiyan power by a measure of 10, while his body in turn expands to house all that extra strength. With burning red eyes and fists that could crush any warrior on the battlefield like a grape, Great Ape Turles is a blood-chilling sight to behold, with Bardock in particular reflecting on how this exact phase is the last thing his countless victims saw back during his time in the Frieza Force. However, refusing to die so soon after returning to life, the scarred Saiyan decides to play his little brother's game and hope that the chat he had with his inner Ruzaru would allow him to get the upper hand in this fight, just as he appeared to be getting in their initial salvo. And so with a roar reminiscent of the beast that is to come, Bardock lobs his own power ball into the sky, while silently thanking whatever brilliant scientist invented such a handy trick. After so many extermination missions, this feels like putting on an old familiar coat, albeit one that no longer quite fits the way it used to, though pushing any potential discomfort, be it physical or psychological, down for the time being. Bardock too allows himself to grow, so that soon he towers over the battlefield just like his little brother. Then as Crimson Eyes meet Crimson Eyes, the two great apes lunge at each other. But this is where we'll be leaving our story off for right now. And that's it for part 13. I know this is a pretty hateful cliffhanger, and that it's been a while since you even heard me do an actual video sign out, but I wanted to take the opportunity to say thank you to my community, as this will be my last mainline video of 2024 after all. And after his passing in March of this year, I of course want to again say thank you to Akira Toriyama-sensei for the story of Dragon Ball and all the other gifts he gave to the world and their impact on me and others. As well as special thanks to the channel supporters whose names are scrolling across the screen now, as they've been so vital in bringing this story to life with the quality I think it deserves. Next time, we finish off this universe's Saiyan Saga and begin this incarnation of the Namek and Frieza sagas. So please, as we get into an era of the story with more custom art needs than ever, consider joining up on Patreon or becoming a channel member to help push this series and others out faster and with higher quality. Being sure you subscribe and leave likes on my videos and posts is also a great way to help out though. And just as importantly, please take care of yourselves and the world around you. Go beyond plus ultra, and I'll look forward to seeing you again soon next time.